Okay, here we go.
Good morning.
Sunday morning. With a new camera angle.
That's right. New camera angle and a new drink of choice last night.
New drink of
we were on
choice.
dry martinis last night, actually, in honour of Paul Desmond.
Yeah, a large jug of that.
Yeah.
So, first of all, hi, and great to see some of the old VC gang back online. So, big shout out to Secca Funk and John Coltrane 68 and Chris 127 Basket.
Everyone. Yeah, they're legends, all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So hopefully we might see Mike Bostonian, Reggie. Hopefully Ben Costello is going to be back soon. Maybe even Fred. But anyway.
And also thanks to Roger Coltman for Did you say Roger? Did you say Roger?
Oh well, yeah, Roger.
Yeah.
Roger was mentioning us. So
Yeah, he's not an old returnee, but thank you anyway.
Yes. So here we go. On to the music. Yes, the first track we listened to was from the introducing 11th House, the 11th House album, which, sort of very early days fusion music, I guess, with Alphonse Mouzon, Randy Brecker, Larry Coryell, Mike Mandel and Danny Triffin. And we listened to the track called Bird Fingers, which is the first track on side one. And it was quite an explosive start, especially given we're getting very close to bonfire night here. There was definitely some musical fireworks.
I think I've ever heard Danny Triffin in another record, actually.
No.
Staying with the fusion mode, but moving forward to the mid-70s, I guess, actually, from Tony Williams' Lifetime, which I think is my favourite, believe it, favourite of the later period Tony Williams records, and played the track Fred. This is the band with Alan Holdsworth and Tony Newton and Alan Pascal on keyboards. Great.
Sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to discover that I had the album.
Yeah. No, you didn't.
That I'd forgotten I had it.
Really good stuff.
First of a bit of VCLT I've got from Ben Costello. This is the album Dreams, which was the first of two Dreams albums. Dreams sort of featured the Becker brothers, Billy Cobham, who was on guitar? John Abercrombie, I think. Yes. Again, sort of fusion, but a bit more of a kind of horn rock vibe. But Ben was telling me that it was one of Billy Cobham's favourite albums that he played on, and no one seems to know very much about it. But the side two in particular is like a whole suite, and there's some fabulous playing on that. So it was great to listen to that. Thank you to Ben again.
I think Chuck Rainey was the original bass player in Dreams. I think.
Was he?
Yeah, I think so.
Actually a band member.
Yeah, band member. And I think also Will Lee then took over from Chuck Rainey. I think. So I kept with the funkiness of that and went into funk, really, and went for James Brown from It's a New Day, Let a Man Come In, and played It's a Man Come In, Do the Popcorn, which is just kind of really classic, kind of late 60s, early 70s sound from James, really tight. Great horn.
Great horns. And I went on to play a 12-inch by Dyke and the Blazers, Let a Woman Be a Woman and a Man Be a Man. I don't know a huge amount about Dyke and the Blazers, apart from the fact that they sound massively influenced by James Brown. But this is a lovely 12-inch, sounded absolutely enormous. The label's called Beat Goes Public, and it seems to come out of London NW10.
Which is where I live.
Which is where John lives, but it's got nothing to do with him.
Nothing to do with me at all, no. But a lot of people cite them as as a kind of influence.
Dyke and the Blazers.
Yeah, definitely. Staying with the funky side of things, went for some classic Florida funk, and Graham McRae from her album Rocking Chair played 90% of You, which is a bit of a classic from that time. Band with Little Beaver and all kinds of our favourites on there. Timmy Thomas, Lattimore. Really good album.
John and I were reminiscing. This is years ago. We went to see Michel Ndegeocello at a venue called Subterranea in West London, and the DJ, who I actually happen to know as well, played that tune after the set, which had been an absolutely smoking set.
It was that's one of the best live gigs ever seen.
Yeah,
Right,
and it
definitely.
sounded great. So next up, we've got something that I've had on CD actually, and I didn't know you could get vinyl. And there's one particular track. It's the Red Hot and Riot double album, sort of lots of different artists covering Fela Kuti tunes. And there's an amazing version of Water No Get Enemy, which on the CD is kind of, for some unknown reason, is split into 2 tracks. That's really, really annoying. And it features Pino Palladino, Roy Hargrove, Nile Rodgers, Macy Gray,
Everybody.
D'Angelo, yeah, Femi Kuti. Really fantastic album, actually. There's really, every track is interesting. So I was just delighted to be able to pick this up on a German reissue on double vinyl. Yeah.
They really do their albums well, Red Hot and Riot people.
Yeah.
Then went for some hip hop. Suddenly realised I hadn't never played this at a session. New Kendrick Lamar. Not much to say about it really. It's It's track Feel, almost as good as the last 2, I think. Actually, classic album, obviously a big hit. It's kind of interesting how radical it sounds though, for something that's really kind of crossed over and is picking up Grammys and God knows what else as well. Can't go wrong with Kendrick. Really. I think he's out there way in front of everybody else in the hip hop field.
Now that track had a bossa nova vibe.
It
didn't
did,
it?
yeah.
I'm just trying to remember how I got from
Yeah,
Kendrick Lamar
there was a
to,
slight bossa nova thing going on in the background.
to Lee Morgan. There was definitely
Yeah.
there was a bossa rim shot. So that opened the door for me to play Kiora from Cornbread, which is a sort of mid-60s Blue Note Lee Morgan release. And just to say, anyone who still has not seen his name is Morgan?
I called him Morgan.
I called him Morgan.
Yeah.
The film, it's absolutely fantastic, and really for me reevaluated how amazing Lee Morgan was as a trumpet player, and how influential he was.
Film's now on Netflix in the UK, I think, as
It
well
is,
as in the States. So definitely,
Yeah.
actually, worth seeing in the cinema though, because it sounds great as well.
Amazing soundtrack.
Keeping with that kind of slightly bossa kind of feel, went for Paul Desmond and his album Bridge Over Troubled Water, where he's playing the songs of Simon and Garfunkel, and I played the 49th Street Bridge song, also known as Feeling Groovy as well. This was kind of, Mark in the last session mentioned that he'd actually picked up, I think it was on the Sergio Mendes record, from looking at Steve Kahn's website. And I remember years ago reading his description of this track on that site as well. But it's a great band, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Airto playing drums. I've always liked him playing drums, actually, on this album. But this is a kind of CTI before CTI. It's on A&M Records. Definitely recommended.
Next up, there was some beautiful bass playing on
Yeah,
that,
Ron Carter.
and a lovely sort of melodic bass solo actually. So that again, like, got me thinking of this album, which I've only just picked up. This is not the original, unfortunately, because that's worth hundreds of pounds. This is The Descendants of Mike and Phoebe, A Spirit Speaks. This has just been reissued on, oh God, I can't remember.
Pure Pleasure?
Pure Pleasure, that's it. Absolutely fantastic looking and sounding pressing. This is an album that's kind of put together by Bill Lee, of course, who was Spike Lee's dad, and various members of the Lee family. I think 4 of them appear on this. And it's a kind of mix of jazz, spiritual jazz, soprano jazz singing, some sort of Latin-y feeling, just a kind of real hodgepodge. And it was originally on Strata East. And it's got Billy Higgins and Sonny Brown on drums.
I think you play the track Coltrane.
I played the track
Which I think is
Coltrane,
also,
yeah.
there's also a version of on the Clifford Jordan last B Games record.
Beautiful track.
Really nice track.
Really nice
And
track.
Billy Higgins is in there as well. Then something, I don't know, pushed me in the direction of John Lucian, who I don't think we've had at a session before, actually.
Maybe
Not for a long time. He's a jazz singer. I always kind of slightly put him in the same kind of bag as Terry Callier, if you like Terry. I mean, his voice is different, but similar kind of material. And on this record, he does a version of Maiden Voyage with lyrics by somebody I assume is Herbie Hancock's wife, actually, or partner at the time. another family member or something. And it's from the album Song for My Lady, produced by Dave Grusin. Very nice trumpet solo on the track as well by Oscar Brasher. Good singer. This and Rashida is a very good album by John Lucin. But great singer. Definitely in the kind of crossover between soul and kind of spiritual jazz, really.
Yeah, yeah. We followed that up with another John Lucin track off the Jazz Juice compilation, and this was Jazz Juice 3. So Jazz Juice was a series of albums that came out in the 80s on Street Sounds that were, I think, all compiled by Giles Peterson, and were very much part of that. This kind of pre-acid jazz. It was just it was kind of Giles getting on Radio London and playing a lot of jazz. They're all actually, some of them a bit cheesy to be fair, but this track, Listen Love, sounded great.
Which I think might be off Rashida, actually.
Is it?
I think it might be,
Yeah.
yeah. Very good, yeah, really nice. This is a bit, then I played the track Try Love Again off the Natural 4 album. Now this is sort of little story behind it. I heard this and thought it was, I misheard it and thought it was by Leroy Hudson. Spent ages looking for it and was just about to buy, then finally found out it was a Natural 4, but somebody played it on the radio. And then found out I had it. The collection, so I didn't buy it at all. Natural 4 were a band on Curtom Records, which is Curtis Mayfield's label, vocal group. And Try Love Again is an absolutely classic kind of, in the UK it was a kind of classic rare groove track. Very loose kind of feel to it. It's a kind of mid-tempo soul thing, but with an incredibly loose horn arrangement on it. Very unusual. Great band. Anyway, they made, I think, 2 or 3 albums, Natural 4.
Yeah, I've never seen that one before.
Yeah.
I've got it on a Rare Groove Master Cuts double album, I think.
I think I've got it, so I think it's got Promet copy on the back.
Oh, very good. Second VCLT showing. This is Bobby Humphrey and Fancy Dancer, and the thank you to Ben, who's in Canada, I believe, at the moment. And this is Mestizo Eyes. And I have to say, the more I get into this album, the more I think it's possibly one of my favourite Mizell Brothers albums. Really, really great. Just not a duff track on it. Fantastic.
Sticking with the Chuck Rainey, Harvey Mason rhythm section, went for Harvey's, I think, first solo album, wasn't it? I think he made another one afterwards, I think, called Marching in the Street. Harvey Mason, drummer, of course, with the Headhunters, all kinds of different people. Played the track Madaji, which has lots of versions of, but it's written by Dave Grusin. Just a great track, sampled all over the place as well.
We then sort of hit a little. Well, actually, maybe we didn't. I don't know. Anyway, this track definitely followed beautifully. A Secret Place from Grover Washington, also featuring Harvey Mason, and the amazing bass playing of Anthony Jackson. Again, Grover sort of got quite. He wasn't exactly the flavour of the month by the cognoscenti in the 70s, but actually, all of his albums, there's always great stuff on them, and just a great mood on this track.
It was interesting. Sax players really rate Grover Washington. So he was actually he was a much better player than he ever kind of showed on his records. Actually. We had Little Beaver, the last session, we have Little Beaver this session as well, from his album Joey, wearing extraordinary get-up as usual, a pair of jodhpurs and smoking a pipe in this case.
So those in the UK boxing will be able to see the direct lineage of Chris Eubanks from Little Beaver.
Absolutely. And played a very odd track called 2 Steps from the Blues, which is kind of like it almost sounds like a very, very long intro, then it suddenly stops, actually.
Yes.
It's kind of, anyway, Little Beaver, you always need Little Beaver around.
We all need some Little Beaver. So this kind of kicked off a bit of a kind of guitar passage, I think. Here we go. You can't get much better than this. Jimi Hendrix and the track Come On, which I remember playing in my very first ever band. I've always been extremely excited by the moment when Jimmy steps on the wah-wah pedal on this particular solo. It's just, the sound is just so kind of out there, and you can hear the hum of the Marshall stacks, and it's just like a wild beast being let free, I think.
Yeah, In fact, I played the whole album a little while ago. And there's all kinds of, you can hear the studio stuff all the way through. It's just people talking. It's impossible to follow Jimmy, really. But if anybody has a mild claim to fame to being in the same ballpark as Jimmy, it's Eddie Hazel, ex from Funkadelic, and Parliament, and George Clinton kind of line up, and played the track I Want You, She's So Heavy, a cover of the Beatles tune from his album, his only solo album, released while he was alive anyway, called Games, Dames and Guitar Things, which was from kind of mid-70s, I guess.
With some great drumming on it.
Great drumming as well from, well, who knows? You never know who's actually on the track.
But that's one of my favourite Beatles tracks.
It is, no, absolutely.
But it also has that wild spirit to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Staying with great guitarists, but sort of ramping down the distortion and the volume a bit, we listened to a track from Eric Gale's Multiplication album, and we listened to the track called Morning Glory, which is written by Lee Ritenour, and featured some lovely rhythm section of Alfonso Johnson on the bass and Steve Gadd on the drums. I think this has just been reissued. Oh yeah, Willie Weeks is also there, but not on that particular track. Yeah.
Then I had a weird one, because I had from Spirits, the family that plays together, which I think was their second or third album, and I had this on vinyl originally, and then couldn't get a good vinyl replacement, so I bought the CD and then found one. I never really kind of listened to the CD, and I loaded it up onto my iPod a little while ago, and there's one of the bonus tracks called Mellow Fellow on here. In fact, there's a whole bunch of bonus tracks which are really great on here, so it's kind of classic example of don't get rid of your CDs sometimes, actually, because there's some really good great guitar playing from California on there, really kind of fitted with. He's always a really underrated guitarist.
Absolutely, who did play with Jimmy apparently in the early days.
Yeah, and what I hear was taught Walter Becker, I think, as well, which I didn't know about until recently.
Possibly we might have had a break. Anyway, we came back with the Fania All Stars. Yet another VCLT gift from Ben Costello, and we listened to the track El Raton. This is a sort of fantastic album, half recorded live in front of thousands of people in 1973 in New York, and half in the studio, and has lots of amazing special guests like Billy Cobham, Jorge Santana.
Who you have to say sounds very much like Carlos.
We were just wondering whether that actually really is Carlos, with pretending it's a brother. I don't know. Great album. Thank you, Ben.
Amazing atmosphere on it as well.
Yeah, and lovely. It's on the Pink Label Island as well, which is always nice.
Don't know what the connection was between that and this, actually, but I think we all started to fall bits a bit towards the end of the session.
We probably had half a jug of martini.
We had probably by this point, actually. Then I played a Gene Page track at the last session, and a couple of, I think it was 2 record score days ago, Blackula, which was his soundtrack for the Blaxploitation movie, came out, which has got some it's got some terrible vocal tracks by the Hughes Corporation on here, which are not very good at all, but some very, very good instrumentals on there as well. So it's classic band with Ed Green. So it's kind of like instrumental, kind of classic kind of mid-tempo funk, really, of kind of almost like Barry White without the vocals in a way. Very nice red vinyl. Actually, it wasn't very expensive either. Actually, was quite cheap.
Barry White with fangs.
Barry White with fangs, absolutely.
Yeah. So, we had a very mini tribute to someone who seems to have passed without barely any recognition at all, which was the keyboard player and organist Earl Wire-Lindo, who appears on... He's here, actually. This is him. Who appears on this great Peter Tosh album called Equal Rights. And, also appears on a lot of the Bob Marley and the Wailers albums. But one of the Wailers, well, who just didn't really ever seem to get any.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
Low battery.
Sorry, a little bit of a break there. We didn't really sort of.
You need to plug it in as a battery going to run out before the end of the session.
Oh, I don't know. No, I think we're going to be okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So from one great keyboard player to an earlier kind of great reggae keyboard player Jackie Mitu, and played the track Totally Together, which was a present from Mark, I think, for birthday before last.
Yeah.
Actually, which is one of the Studio One 7-inch reissues on Soul Jazz Records. Talking of Soul Jazz Records.
Talking of Soul Jazz Records, I have to actually get this out because of, I don't know if you can see, a rather beautifully Studio One etched side of a 12-inch single. Again on Studio One, again on Soul Jazz, and an unreleased track by a group called The Officials, and it was one of those sort of very spiritual vocal trio tracks floating across the hills of Jamaica. It's called Distant Drums. Very good. There's only 250 of these, and I've got one of them, so I'm very happy about that.
A little while ago, this was reissued on, well, it's not actually on Randy's, it was on Impact, which was, and it's an Augustus Pablo Java, classic Augustus Pablo, played melodica, if people don't know him, kind of dub, great kind of spiritual sound, very much the spiritual roots sound of 60s and 70s reggae. Can't go wrong with Augustus Pablo.
And this, which I must just do a quick shout out to James Buttery, who I know has just discovered Lee Perry and was asking for other great Lee Perry albums, and I think John and I definitely feel The Upsetters Chapter 1 by Scratch and Company is right up there. And we listened to the track When Jar Come from Devon Iron.
Yeah, I think this is definitely in my top 2 or 3. Lee Perry is that one. Then I kind of didn't have any more reggae in the box, but so we moved over to moved up a little bit to New Orleans and Aaron Neville, and played the track Hercules, which is a classic track, but as Mark said, it always never sounds like it's got any bass on it at all, actually. But a classic tune anyway.
It is. There's a great version by Young MC that uses the sample of that and kind of just adds a massive great kick drum underneath it.
But Aaron Neville, obviously one of the Neville brothers.
Yeah, beautiful track.
Yeah.
This, I think I might have bought this at the Vinyl Head record shop, where we're going after this to do a DJ set. It's non-stop here. This is a terrible cover from Eddie Kendricks, Boogie Down, but a great track which was called Honey Brown. You can pick this up very cheap. It's just such a beautiful voice. Kind of whatever he sings, it just sounds incredible, I think.
Keeping on the beautiful voice tip, I mean, don't need to tell you about Marvin Gaye, obviously. Well, I hope I don't anyway. Let's get it on. But also just a track that often gets ignored on here, which is If I Should Die Tonight, which is a kind of ballad, actually. There's some great singing on it as well. This is the Marvin Gaye classic album.
Talking of singers of our times, I think it's sort of Curtis Mayfield seems to be making an awful lot of sense right at this moment. And this is off the album Sweet Exorcist. I noticed I paid £3 for this in a record and tape exchange in Notting Hill, which obviously is quite a long time ago. And the track Kung Fu.
Yeah, absolutely
great.
One of the great run. I had some Curtis with me, so we stayed with him and then played a track off America Today. There's No Place Like America Today, which has got a great cover, actually. I was really like the cover of this. Also feels very kind of pertinent. Played the track Billy Jack, which is almost like a kind of update on Superfly in a way, in terms of lyrical content, but incredibly stripped down raw sound on here. Great production, great guitar, kind of great rhythm guitar playing.
We moved on to a track off the Blackenized EP. These were Edinburgh-based, sort of, I don't know, jazz, hip-hop, outfit. Signed to the Stereo MCs label, and I was telling John I actually did a bass session for them, but I don't know if that track ever came out. But anyway, we listened to the second mix of the track Vibrations, the Summer Madness mix, and it uses a lovely sample from People Make the World Go Round, the Milt Jackson version.
Yeah, kind of almost trip hop kind of.
Yeah, trip hop is the word that escaped my brain momentarily there.
I'm not sure what got me on. Oh, I know, there's People Make the World Go Around, and from obviously Freddie Hubbard's playing on that. Then went for Freddie Hubbard's, I think it was his last CTI album, Keep Your Soul Together, which was his favourite, but he actually got to play with his band rather than with the usual CTI lineup. Junior Cook and Ralph Penland and Ken Brinkley and George Cables, and played the very beautiful ballad called Brigitte. Was a ballad, changes tempo halfway through. But this is a great album. Not often talked about. Obviously, people talk about Skydive and Red Clay and stuff, but this is a really nice album with a really bad cover.
It's a very bad cover. We then sort of definitely moved into a low gear to cruise out of the session, having now drunk the entire jug of gin martini.
Yeah.
And I think we were onto herb teas by this stage to try and stay together. This is the incredible Grant Green album Idle Moments, and we listened to the title track, which is just phenomenal. Has a complete sort of, I don't know, it's just got such its own sort of space and feel. And the track, which basically was a mistake, because I think Grant Green sort of he basically soloed for twice as long as he should have been, and then everyone else soloed for twice as long as they should have done after that. So it ended up being a really long track, but everyone just stretches out and there's so much space and beautiful playing on the whole album.
It was like an ambient record in a way.
It is, yeah.
Staying with Blue Note, played the track Search for Peace, which we all want to do, off the album. This is McCoy Tyner's first album for Blue Note, called The Real McCoy, which is a pretty fiery album on the whole, but this one track is kind of laid back on here as well. Great band: Joe Henderson, McCoy Tyner, Ron Carter and Elvin Jones, which can't really get much better than that, really. A very nice album, actually. A lot of people's favourite McCoy record.
I didn't know it, but it sounded great. So the breathy tone of Joe Henderson on that track got me thinking of Ben Webster, and a track called Blue Light off the album Atmosphere for Lovers and Thieves, which was recorded in 1965. And actually didn't sound quite as good as I remembered last time I listened to it, but it also sounded very kind of dirty.
Yeah. In terms of the surface of the record.
The surface of the record.
Content of the music.
Not the kind of music.
Then I played, we went last track.
Lo-fi to hi-fi.
Lo-fi to hi-fi. And played this Gillian Welch, I don't know if people know her, and Dave Rawlins, her partner. They've been making fantastic kind of crossover folk country music for the last 15 years, really. They don't put many records out. They really think about what they're doing. Fantastic performers, great musicians, and they've now bought their own vinyl pressing plant, evidently, in order to start putting their stuff out on vinyl, which is something they always wanted to do. And this is her last album, solo album, which is called The Harrow and the Harvest, and this has been redone. Beautiful cover. The cover's been redone, great thick, great pressing, and it's driven people at Analog Planet and Stereophile into ecstasy, basically, because it's such a good pressing. Not 180 gram, interesting enough. They pressed it on a normal weight vinyl. But
Sounded really lovely.
Great music. I mean, overall, they're just great musicians, really, the two of them. And played the track The Way It Will Be. And if you check out that on YouTube, you'll see them do a great version of that.
And we closed the session with a solo guitar track by Ali Farka-Touré, the Malian super guitarist and singer. And that's the final bit of VCLT from Ben. So, thanks everybody.
Also reminded me of an old girlfriend, that track, so it was quite nice.
That did. John was looking very happy during that. And yes, just to say, we're off to Vinyl Head in Ramsgate to do a Sunday morning session of spinning, and also I will put the link to the All Points radio show latest. It's coming out every 2 weeks. Please tune in.
Yeah.
And see you very soon.
Yeah. Also on Mixcloud.
Also on Mixcloud.
See you soon.
Bye.